Abyssal, Murmurs. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next horror stories. Story 1. The Knock at Midnight, a terrifying encounter with black-eyed kids. It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog, Lucy, barking. She was upright on the bed, where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter. Staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over a house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months, and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything, our roommate. A creak from the house settling. The awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared. And I figured it should work with a puppy too. I opened the door and she raced to the front door. She stood there, snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I had never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened the baby gate blocking the doorway, planning to open the door and show her everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumped toward me, and when I touched the metal, she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was afraid and backing down. As her mannerism changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I had been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole. I can't explain why I looked, but I did. Outside were 2 kids. One was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21, and she looked to be 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde, and she wore it long, about mid-back, with long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and a thin-looking olive-colored pullover-style hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl who looked to be around 3 or 4 in the same style jeans and a button-down ivory cardigan. The smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair, tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to one my daughter has, as was their style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled. Nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless. She held her head tilted downward, and I couldn't see her eyes. She said, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black, or midnight blue, or a dark, dark purple. They were otherworldly. She said, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I have never been one to believe in these things as a staunch atheist and skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. I had written off many a ghost story from friends and family members, eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe it. Still, I couldn't rationalize my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. Slowly and silently, I backed away from the door, Lucy still cowering at my ankles. She kept talking. "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step, the tone changed. At first, she seemed polite. When I took that second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in. I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door, and I inched backward, though something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back toward the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered up the window, locked the door, and sat there in the dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more, and then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I haven't slept right since. I know from reading about them that BAKs can't just come in without permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me to forget it, but this lingering feeling of sadness, this dread when the house is silent at night, this fear of a knock at the door, this tells me otherwise. It is also said that they will say whatever they can to come inside your home, and they say you are not supposed to let them in. Supposedly, they can't come in unless you let them. We don't know for sure if they are real or not. It's a myth. What will you do if in the middle of the night one knocks on your door and asks to be let in? Creepy, right? Story 2. Haunted by the Dead. Real ghost stories from a Thai refugee camp. These are real ghost stories that I encountered during my childhood in Thailand. People said that refugee camp, Vinai, Thailand, was a burial ground for the eyes. They are right, because there were graves everywhere. The school that I attended has 2 or 3 graves right in front of the classroom. There was a big cemetery next to the school playground. Hmong bury their death in their backyard. Funeral lasted for days, and they said that at night the death comes to life. Suddenly, my next-door neighbor passes away. During the night, they would play the tradition drum and keej. If you think it's annoying at the funeral, how about sleeping a brick wall away from all those noise? We were the luckier family that gets to live in the brick apartment that many didn't get a chance. Anyhow, I think the funeral lasted for 3 or 4 nights. On the last night, I came home from playing with my friend. It was dark, and the drum and keej had just started playing. I stood on the entering of our house, and my mom was down by the kitchen with only the oil lamp on. I called for my mom because I wanted to be sure someone was home before I make my way through the long, dark hallway. I heard my mom's voice and started making my way to the kitchen. After a few steps in the big and long hallway, I stopped, and there it was, a little girl or boy with long hair standing between me and the kitchen. I froze, and for the first time in my young life, I had to make a decision if I should have kept going or turned back. Of course, I turned back. I was only a few steps in. If you have never seen a ghost before, beware that when you do, everything surround you becomes slow motion. They said that dog can see the things most humans can't see. That is something I truly believe in. On this night, I was over at my grandma's house. It was very late. I think everyone was already asleep. My grandma was washing herself outside, and I stood guarding her. We were standing behind a big water pottery about the height of an adult. Out of nowhere, dogs were barking back and forth. Grandma and I turned to observe the commotion and witnessed something out of the ordinary. The dogs were chasing a flying white figure. Grandma stops washing herself instantly and took me inside the house. Last, but not least, after my cousins bury their father in the backyard, I went to their house for a sleepover. The 3 of us were sharing a single bed, and my oldest cousin got up in the middle of the night to do his business. Suddenly, I heard a loud scream of fear. His scream had awakened the entire neighborhood. Everyone was rushing to his aid. He went on to describe that, as he was about to release it in the backyard, someone ran up to him. He looked like a thief, but they didn't look human. It had 2 red eyes. I think my cousin was still in a trance when he said that. The shaman said that it was his father that ran up to him. Story 3. The 31 Student, the mystery of the teacher's haunted classroom. This story isn't mine. I saw it from a website and thought it would be nice to have it posted here too. CLASSROOM. There was a high school teacher whose class consisted of exactly 30 students. He was particularly strict and a little bit cruel to his students, making them stay back until late at night every day to study in the library, in order to make sure his students stayed back and didn't sleep. He asked them all to call his cell phone at certain times during the night and tell him their student number. This went well for a while, but all of a sudden, late one night, he received a call. He answered as per usual, and a girl's weak voice replied, "Hi, teacher. I'm number 31," and then abruptly hung up on him. At first, he didn't even realize, but then he felt furious as he thought one of his students was playing him for a fool. The next day, he stormed into the classroom and demanded the student who pulled the prank own up to it. No one did, and they all denied knowing anything about it. He threatened the whole class, telling them he would beat them all if it happened again that night. Unexpectedly, it did happen again. At the exact same time, to the second. He tried to ask the girl who was calling, but she hung up so quickly he couldn't get a word in. The next day, he lived up to his threats and beat the students in the class, demanding someone own up. Of course, no one did. He even went so far as to go to other classes and ask them about it, but no one would admit to anything. The calls continued on schedule every night the same way. Then finally one night he got his word in on time. "Who are you?" he questioned frantically. The girl replied softly, "You know me." To which the teacher said, "My class has only 30 students. Stop trying to trick me." The girl only said this, "I'm always watching you during class, teacher. But you only show me your back. I want to see your face." Then she, once again, abruptly cut off the call. He told his students that they need not stay back at all, even going so far as to change his cell phone number. But the calls continued. The teacher eventually went crazy from the continuous and unexplained calls and retired shortly after. A few months after his retiring, the school underwent renovations. But while the builders were replacing the blackboard in the classroom of the old teacher, they were shocked to discover the dead body of a young girl had been hidden behind the blackboard. Story 4. Grandma's Visit. Unexplained encounters during the funeral. My grandma, from my mom's side, was diagnosed with cancer, and the doctor said that she had less than 6 months to live. Knowing that there's nothing left the doctor could do, my grandma told her Nayab that she does not want to trouble any of us, and the following day she decided to leave. August 21, 2012. R.I.P. Grandma. We love and miss you dearly. The funeral was decided to be held the week after my grandma's death, because it was held on the first week of college, and my dad's chicken that no one can watch over. My 3 brothers and I couldn't leave on Thursday with the rest of my family to Sacramento. We're from Oroville, so we had to stay home until Saturday morning to be able to leave. When I got home from school that Friday night, the first day of the funeral started. I was really tired, so I took a nap. Around 8 p.m., I woke up from hearing my little brother yelling and cussing over whoever was on the phone with him. He said it seemed like someone kept trying to prank us. Again, the phone rang this time, so I decided to pick it up. I didn't say anything and listened carefully. It sounded like the sound of a fast-forward cassette. Then, I heard my mom's voice in the background with many people around her, so I'm guessing it was from the funeral since she's there. I kept calling Mom. Mom, is that you? She couldn't hear me, so I clicked. The phone rang again, and I picked up and heard the same thing again. Again, my mom couldn't hear me, so I clicked and called her back. I asked her if she had called the house phone on accident, but she said no. I told her to double-check. Maybe she had butt-dialed the house phone without knowing it, but she checked, and there was no call. I shrugged it off, but the phone kept on ringing, and no one was on the other line. I got annoyed. I unplugged the phone. Around 10 p.m., when I was in my younger sister's room, all by myself upstairs, I heard a distant infant baby cry. I thought that was so weird, because on my block, you will never hear a baby cry. It kept going on for a while. Then I heard it. My grandma's sick and weak voice said, "Va, as va."
I got so creeped out and chills ran through me.
I yelled out, "Niem taus yog, haze tias yog koji, sees, tex hob los wali koj. Tag kis kuv, mam li tuaj saib koje." Grandma, if that's you, don't do that. I'll come visit you tomorrow. I ran as fast as I could to the living room and saw my younger brother sitting on the sofa, so I told him what I heard. I called my dad and told him what happened. He said, "Don't be scared. It's probably because all my sisters were there, except for me, so my grandma probably didn't see me and missed me, so she came." He told me if it happened again, then yell at my grandma that it's not right for her to keep doing that and scaring her grandchildren. My parents told us to keep the light in the upstairs hallway on, so we did. Stupid me, slept by myself because I usually just shrugged things off. When I closed my eyes and opened them again, I saw that the lights were turned off. If someone came to turn it off, I would have heard it since our house floors are made out of wood. Again, trying to stay positive, I thought maybe my brother came to turn it off. Trying to sleep in my quiet room, every 5-10 minutes I kept hearing a big stomp on the floor. Okay, now I'm creeped out, so I grabbed my blanket and pillow, ran downstairs, and slept in my brother's room with them. Their room was so uncomfortable after an hour. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go back to my room. I called my boyfriend and knocked out on the phone with him. That was the end of my encounter with my grandma. Now, the second day of the funeral, my clueless sisters kept taking pictures of herself, and she caught a white sleeve on the wall behind her, just like the one my grandma was wearing. My grandparents are Christian, so my grandma wasn't dressed in monk clothes. Instead, she wore this white robe-looking thing. Ick, how to describe it. Lol. My sister got creeped out, showed it to my mom, and my mom told her to delete it. That's all we have experienced during the funeral. My sister told me that sometimes before she sleeps, she will pray for my grandma. I thought she was ridiculous sometimes because we were shaman. Lol. Anyway, she said that she dreamed about my grandma quite often. For example, in one of her dreams, she was getting raped, but my grandma came in and helped her. This other time, after my parents argued, she had a dream that my grandma came and took my mom with her because my dad didn't love her. Now, my mom just told me a couple days ago that my auntie kept seeing my grandma in her house. My grandma will come in and say she's hungry, walk to the kitchen, and disappear. Sometimes, at the corner of my auntie's eyes, she will see my grandma with her children. My mom said that because my grandparents have converted to Christianity. When my grandma died, they wouldn't allow them to take the cow and give it in front of my grandma's body. I'm not so sure. Kind of confused. I know that when we die, we are to be sacrificed with a Nuji to take it with us and travel back, go where we came from. Anyhow, because that wasn't allowed, my grandma is hungry, so that's why she keeps going to my auntie's house. We live in Oroville, so it's quite hard to visit my grandma's gravestone in Sacramento. Since my mom will always cry at every visit, we only visit my grandma once a month and bring food. Story 5. Nightmare on the Bunk Bed. A dream blurring reality. Hello, I just wanted to share my dream with you readers. And as I'm about to tell you my dream, I sleep on the top bunk bed shared with my roommate. It's 3:0 a.m. on October 17. I'm about to go to sleep after a long night of playing RuneScape and just about to put up my BOT to auto-train. I was so overjoyed to reach agility level 92 and fishing level 99 at the Barbarian Fishing Guide that I hurried onto my shared bunk bed with my roommate. My roommate's name is Gerald. He'd been asleep a few hours before me, and so just as I went to sleep and laid down, it felt like I had just closed my eyes, and then came this lady from across the bathroom. Our shared room and the bathroom were just steps across from each other. When she came in, I didn't even notice, but for some reason, she was sleeping with my roommate on the top bunk. And here I thought to myself, maybe that's his girlfriend, right? But then, bam, déjà vu. I wasn't the one sleeping on the top bed anymore. I was actually sleeping on the bottom bunk bed. This time, she wasn't walking in. She was already sleeping next to my roommate, and kind of just turned over to him, leaning onto the side with her foot sticking out of the bed and pointing towards the closet. I was just staring at her, and then she turned and stared at me. I was thinking to myself, W-O-W. She is really hot. I want to fuck. Just as I thought about saying those words out loud, she came down from the bunk bed, and she was really drunk. I'm talking about the kind of drunk that couldn't walk by themselves. I took her to the bathroom, and she was sitting on the toilet seat. Then I inserted my brother inside her, and my brother was huge. I know for sure she liked it. She was twisting, turning, moaning, and groaning. Her body looked so real. She was so hot, and after I came, it felt like it had been hours just banging this chick. I had woken up because of another phase, and this was phase 2 of not being fully woken up in my sleep. But then I was on the top bunk this time, like I just magically poofed right back to where I was sleeping. It felt like my roommate from the bottom bunk was trying to wake me up. He kept kicking and tapping from below, and there was this rumpled, stilt-skinned doll that just kept smiling and banging itself at the side of my pillow. I have 2 blankets, and one of those blankets I use as a pillow spreads like a backward U. I use the pillow to keep me from falling down the bunk bed, and it's set to the side. This felt like a couple minutes by now, and you know when you get scared and make squeaking noises like or but with a lower-pitched voice. Yeah, that was me. I was whimpering, and then as soon as I woke up, the doll was gone. My roommate was snoring like a motorcycle. Then, just when it couldn't have gotten any scarier, I heard a dog outside whimpering to its owner. And then I also heard something outside talking just out the window in HMONNG. I got so scared and wanted to know what they were talking about. So I climbed down from my bunk and looked. I saw 5 cats at the center of the street. Being shitless and shirtless scared, I had to wake up my roommate. Story 6. The book that should never be opened, a terrifying encounter. One evening, this guy went to town for a movie with his friends. He was having a lot fun before he realized it was getting very late. He quickly made his way home. It was unusually dark and creepy that night. As he was walking, he was astonished to find an old, creepy-looking street peddler selling some books along the road. It gave him the shivers when he noticed the pale old man staring at him. The old man said, "Son, why don't you buy a book? It will keep you company." He acted brave and thought, why not? He had a look at the old man's collection. His hair began to rise up on end when he noticed all the books were related to the supernatural. Nonetheless, he found one that was very interesting. So he asked the old man, "How much is this, uncle?" The old man replied, "Well, son, that's an interesting book. It's $25. The guy was shocked and said, But that's so expensive." The old man said nothing but glared at him, which freaked him out. He quickly rummaged through his pockets and found $20. "TT, this is all I have," he said. The old man replied, "It's okay, son. You can have the book for that price." As the guy hastily paid for it and made a dash for home, the old man called out to him and said, "Son, whatever happens, don't you ever flip the book to its last page. Remember these words or you will regret it." Reaching home, he quickly asked his parents, "Dad, Mom, are there any new booksellers nearby?" "Not that we know of, but we've heard of a creepy old man that appears only at night during a full moon and then disappears mysteriously. Nobody knows who he is or where he comes from, but many have become victims in his wake." "Why, son?" "And nothing. Just asking," said the guy and ran straight to his room. Nervously, he opened the book and began reading all the time, remembering the warning the old man had given him. But after a while, he grew tired and fell asleep. At midnight, as he was sound asleep in bed, a cold gush of wind blew in through his bedroom window, which startled him and sent chills down his spine. He looked at his table and noticed the wind had blown the pages of the book to its last page. For a while, he laid in bed frozen in fear, but soon curiosity got the better of him. He had to know what was on the last page, since it is already flipped open. Slowly, he got out of bed and carefully picked up the book. As he glimpsed at the last page, he let out a blood-curdling scream and fainted. Story 7. Haunted Room Above the Garage. A nightmare that never left. About 2.5 years ago, I lived in a different house. My bedroom was right above the garage. When I first saw the room, I really knew something wasn't right about it. It seemed so dark. Every night, I would hear noise like footsteps and banging on the wall. I always got VER. Why, strong feelings someone was in there with me watching me. Sometimes doors would open and close and stage noises from my closet. I heard a knock on my door, even though I lived alone. One night, there was a thunderstorm outside. When the biggest lightning landed, it lit up my room for the slightest second. I saw 2 manly figures leaning against my wall. I was shaking in my bed. I wanted to call my friend so bad, Elle, but I didn't want to make any sound or get up. I didn't want them to notice me. Oftentimes, I had closed my closet doors, but in the morning they were open. I said to myself, maybe I didn't really close them each night. So on my camera, I got a video of me closing them just to prove to myself I really did. The next morning they were open. I finally decided telling someone about it. They said I was just paranoid because I had just broke up with my husband, and it was the first time living alone in a while. I agreed with her to seem less crazy, but I know what I have seen. 6 months later, I moved out of that house. 2 days ago, I found out many, Many people have died in that EXACT room. I believe it was their spirits doing that to me. I will never forget that. I hope one of those many people that died in that room didn't die because of the spirits. Story 8. A Shaman's Final Blessing. The last connection between generations. It was the last days of being with my grandmother, as she had had a stroke, and there was nothing we could do for her in her late age and health. That morning, I was with my cousin taking care of her and cleaning her up so that she could get comfortable whilst listening to my aunt's gossip about drama that occurred the night before. My grandma was no longer verbal from the stroke, but would squeeze your hand in understanding. As I sat there, I remember thinking in my head, there was no way I was going to let anyone harm her or disrespect her in her present state. I remember saying in my heart to her that I would promise to hear her words to me and fulfill my promise to her to love all of her kids for her when she left. Just as I said this in my heart, she looked my way and squeezed my hand. It had only been months prior to this moment when she had revealed to me my journey ahead. You see, she was a powerful Niamnib, a shaman of the highest form. She told me then, she knew when I was very young that I also had the gift, and that one day I would follow in her path. This occurred in an almost trance-like state between us, like everything around us went blank, and it was just the two of us in this loud room full of people in our own little bubble where our souls connected. She revealed to me that my instincts about my last few months of incredible spiritual download was correct, that I had the gift. When I asked her why she had not told me of this years ago, when she figured it out, all she said to me was, I had to wait till you were ready to hear and to believe in your power. It had taken me months since then to come to realize this journey ahead of me, becoming a shaman in my own right, was going to happen one way or another. You see, some shamans go and seek their calling. Others, like myself and my grandma, were chosen by their spirit guides and have journeys ahead of us that have already been paved for us. Having finally confirmed my fears, she told me I was going to go on this journey, but for me to wait until I was ready and had my teacher and partner to hold me to this realm. Back to my grandma on her last hours with us. There came a time in my instinct knowing she was getting ready to go. This moment came just like when she had revealed to me my calling. There we were again, just the two of our souls in this big house full of people, and everything got quiet. We were in our own little bubble again. Now, I have never been in a trance-like state before these times, but I knew then, as I know now, they are absolutely real moments. Moments where your souls connect, and you hear what I call a heart song. There had been hours of time that went down that day that the shaman who'd come to interpret Grandma's spirit guides and another shaman family member's supposed spirit guides basically had a spiritual battle. Then there was me, a new awakened person, with the gift I had only just discovered. All of a sudden, I was speaking in the most clear Hmong I have ever spoken in my life. If y'all knew me, you'd know I grew up with white people, so my Hmong was childlike in vocabulary. I've never been able to speak such clear and well-spoken Hmong before in my life. But here I was, in the quiet, which I've come to call it, where our spirits connected, and I was able to interpret for my grandma. All of a sudden, I'm telling my elders, my family members, my siblings, my parents, this is what she's telling us she needs, so that she can leave us and go in peace. I went through every wish she had for her children to hold her one last time, for her grandchildren to say goodbye one last time, for her family to wash her one last time, to get all her good luck and well wishes, for her daughters to dress her in her old clothes, traditional Hong clothing worn by the dead, to prepare her for her next life. All these wishes she had for all of us. Never in my life had I ever been so spiritually connected to another person as I had my grandmother. Our Texojay Kev Anib Shaman journey that bonded us in this special place only we knew. I have learned now that this is what unconditional love entails. That as the old chapter of one lifetime ends, another begins. She was such a great teacher to me. In the so very short months we had in this connection, she was a mother to me, my safe place, and my greatest support. This isn't a scary ghost story, but I hope for anyone who is going through something as powerful as this moment I had, that they aren't alone. Also, that each and every one of you take every moment you have with your loved one to your advantage. This life is so short, and at the end of it, all that matters is the unconditional love you put out there. Story 9. The Haunting in the Hallway. Unexplained noises and a terrifying pursuit. This happened years ago when I was still in elementary school. We lived with my grandparents for over a decade or so. We first moved to Sacramento in '99. When I was younger, I never had a strange or creepy vibe about my grandparents' house. Probably because I was young and didn't pay attention to stuff like that, or simply enjoying the moments spent. It was actually one of my favorite places to visit. It felt like home, of course. It was my grandparents' home. My grandparents lived in a big old 4-bedroom, 2-bath with a huge backyard. Now that I think about it, the house did look creepy. Let me give you guys a layout of the house. When you enter the front door, you see the huge living room with the fireplace. To your right is the dining room and the glass sliding door. To the right of that is the hallway and a doorway to the kitchen and pantry. The hallway was super long. As you enter, you can see the master room all the way at the end. To the left was a bedroom. As you keep going, then 2 more bedrooms are to your left and a bathroom to your right. The switches to the light was at each end of the hallway. For some odd reasons, when you switch the light on at one end, you have to turn it off at the other end. That hallway always gave me the chills, though. And as most Hmong families, my uncles raised chickens. They had built a huge walk-in chicken coop in the backyard. Coolest chicken coop ever, W. Lots of roosters, hens, and chicks. You name it. And my uncles would get up quite early to feed them. Loved them chickens. Lol. Anyways, I shared a room with my sis, aunt, and mom, which was one of the rooms in the middle of the super long hallway. I was the youngest, so I guess that's why I slept by the wall. To the other side of the wall beside me was my uncle's room. So this one morning, around 6 a.m. or so, when the sun had just rose, I could tell because it was still a little dark outside. I had woken up to some noise. I laid there thinking to myself what woke me up. Everyone was still asleep, or so I thought. Just as I thought that I heard light, faint scratching noises going from end to end of the house. I was thinking, well, someone is up, but why this early to let the chickens out? As I lay there listening, the scratching got louder and louder and quicker. Then I was thinking, how are they scratching like that, so loud and so fast, and how? I listened harder. As I listened, I started to get creeped out because it was so quiet, you know, that weird kind of quiet. Then the scratching turned into light pounding, getting louder and louder. faster and faster, back and forth on the wall, one end to another. I looked at my sis and aunt to see if they were awake, hearing what I'm hearing, but they were fast asleep still. I pulled the covers up to my chin. As I did, it stopped right above me. I froze. Everything went quiet. I listened carefully. The noise then came inside our room, pounding next to me on the wall. I followed it with my eyes and ears as it got closer to me. Then right by my face, it went boom, like someone threw something against the wall. It was so loud it made me jump and pull the covers over my head. My heart was beating so fast, and I was scared out of my mind, thinking how the F, and what the F, then I must have fallen asleep, because I've woken up that same morning some hours later, asking my sis and aunt if they heard anything. Then I told them what had happened. My aunt's face turned white, like she had seen a ghost. She then told my sis and I that this one night before we had moved in with them, she had fallen asleep in the living room and woke up because she was thirsty. As she went in the kitchen to get a glass of water, she had a weird vibe, like someone was watching her. She got creeped out and started to run towards my grandparents' room. She tried flipping on the light switch to the hallway, but the light didn't turn on. She ran in the dark to my grandparents' door and pounded on it. She was hysterical and told them what had happened. I guess when she had gotten the weird feeling and bolted toward the room, there was a loud pounding following her all the way from the dining room wall, the dining table, the glass sliding door, and all the way through the hallway beside her. Explain that. Creepy shit. Story 10. The White Tiger, the Ghostly Woman, and the Battle for My Sister's Soul. This story is about my younger sister and her encounters with ghosts and other spirituals. So my grandma had always told my sisters, us as children, to never go to the woods or near our pond alone, especially on a foggy day. She also warned us to never sing love or sad songs when by lakes or rivers. My family owns a big, nice land, and behind our yard, we have a pond that we usually play by. My sister, who's only a year younger than me, is often seen as the prettier one out of us siblings, and she was a pretty good singer. About 4 or 5 years ago, she got out of a relationship and became so depressed because of it. There were times she would go out to our pond after a rainfall, or in the afternoon, and sing sad love songs. Sometimes she would also go to the lake near our house and sing on the beach or while taking a walk. Eventually, she started to become even more depressed and sad. Then one night, she dreamed that a man came to her and told her to go away with him. She refused, and he left. A few days later, she then dreamed of a white tiger coming to get her. She got on its back, and they went off into the woods. After that, she told my mom and dad, but they just dismissed it as nothing. She kept dreaming of the tiger and started to get odd feelings. So she told my grandma of the dream, and my grandma told her to not leave the house anymore. Eventually, my aunt came to visit my grandma, and my sister asked my aunt about the dreams. When my aunt heard, she went and told my parents that we had to do jingle bells for her, because a white dragon was coming to take her away. My parents prepared for the jingle bells for the next few weeks, and my aunt came to do it. While she was doing jingle bells, she traveled and met the dragon and asked him why he was taking my sister away. He then told my aunt that my sister came to him saying she was sad and wanted someone to love her. My aunt then explained that my sister was well loved by us and she was happy. After 4-6 hours of jingle bells, it finally was over. My aunt then told my sister it was okay now, and that the dragon was going to leave her alone. She also warned her never to go singing in the woods or by places where there were a lot of water again. We all thought it was over now, But then last year, after I got married, I received a call from my parents to come help them the next day for Jingle Bells. I asked if it was because of my sister again, and they told me no. The next day, my husband, we went to my parents' place to help prepare for Jingle Bells. My aunt came and did it again, but this time she did it for both my older and younger sister. My older sister got in an accident a while ago, and my parents never U-Plig or did Jingle Bells for her. So over the past months, she became very sick. My younger sister was leaving for Utah for college, so my parents wanted our ancestors to protect her on her journey there. As my aunt did Jingle Bells, I was curious to know what they were really doing it for. So I stayed and listened to the whole thing. My younger sister moved to our basement to sleep down there, since we had a spare room in our basement. But a few days ago, she was in the basement by herself, looking in the mirror and singing. While singing, she suddenly felt really cold and scared. In the mirror, she saw a black figure standing by the door. She got so scared she ran upstairs and told my parents. After that, she refused to sleep in the basement and always slept with my other sisters. So that's why my aunt came to do Jingle Bells. My aunt first did my older sister. She told my parents that because my dad didn't go to the accident site and raise my older sister her spirit from there, her spirit became lost. So my parents had to apologize to her, and my aunt had to go bring her spirit home. After my older sister, my aunt did Jingle Bell for my younger sister next. She traveled to our basement and found the figure my sister saw and questioned it who it was and what it wanted. The figure then told my aunt that it was my grandma. She came to look for my dad, but lost her way and ended up in the basement. My aunt then asked what she came to see my dad for. She explained, when my grandpa passed away, she saw how my dad made a house of money for him. She wanted to request one be made for her too, since she could not live with my grandpa in the afterlife. My dad then told her that he'll make her one since she is his mom and had asked him. But because she scared my younger sister to not do it again, leave the house and go back to the afterlife and wait for her house. My grandma then apologized to my parents, sister, and went back. The next encounter she had was in her dreams. My younger sister called me a month ago and told me that she has been having a lot of nightmares. She told me that the night before, she dreamed that she was walking in the jungle, like in Thailand. She was walking with an old lady wearing old Kong clothes and holding her hand. The lady was taking her somewhere with her. Eventually, they came to a stop. The lady told my sister that all they had to do was continue, and my sister would be with her forever. My sister somehow knew that the lady was dead and was just a ghost taking her to her grave. So she told the ghost that she forgot something at home and had to return to get it. The lady said to just leave it, but my sister refused. The ghost said okay and told her to just keep going straight and come back. My sister said okay and turned back and started to walk. After she was out of sight, she started to run the way she came. Eventually, she saw another lady who was alive and ran to her. She told the lady that a ghost was trying to take her to her grave to kill her, and she didn't want to go. So the lady told my sister to hold her hand and follow her. She told my sister to not make eye contact with the ghost as they walked past it. The ghost saw my sister and called out to her, asking where she was going, and that she was going the wrong way. My sister ignored her and continued to walk away. The lady then told her to run. Together they both started to run, and the ghost chased after them. The lady then told my sister to not let go of her hand. So my sister held her hand tightly. The ghost caught up to them and grabbed her other hand. She pulled her to go the other way. The ghost kept telling my sister that she was going the wrong way, and the lady was telling my sister to not let go. After that, my sister woke up and felt really cold and scared. I told her to call my parents and aunt and tell them about it, but she didn't. It doesn't sound scary, but for me, it's pretty scary since my younger sister is usually encountering events like these. Story 11. Whispers behind closed doors. A mysterious call and unseen footstep. Recently, I've been experiencing some spiritual encounters. I've always been the one out of the siblings who never experience these things. It may be due to the disturbances in the world, such as wars and violence, but one thing is for sure. I'm feeling more vulnerable than ever. I've had a handful of sleep paralysis, but the recent one is still fresh in my memory, so that's the one I'll tell. My eldest sister and my mom just left for work at around 6:10 a.m. I fell back asleep, but I wasn't in deep sleep due to still needing to wake up for work. In between worlds, I heard my sister and my mom talking in the living room. Audible, but was not able to make out what they were talking about. Side note, in the early mornings, my oldest brother and my mom would take my dog out to potty. I knew my brother had put my dog in his kennel already, but at this point, I kept hearing him running in and out from my bathroom to the living room. I thought to myself, did Kiab, my dog's name, get out? My eyes were heavy, and I tried to open them. My shoulders were starting to feel weak, and my body felt tingly. I even tried to bite my tongue to wake myself up. The voices were getting louder and noisier, and my dog was running faster and faster. I could hear his footsteps growing faster and louder as I struggled to break free from this paralysis. At one point, he even popped up at the side of my bed to look at me. Right when I was about to be overcome, my alarm went off. I finally woke up, feeling heavy and tingly from my shoulders all the way to my fingertips. This feeling lasted for a good part of my morning. Just today, I've encountered another situation. It wasn't sleep paralysis. In fact, I was taking a shower. My dog was in the bathroom with me, as I was in the shower. I had some Zen music playing on my phone with my mind wandering and my dog asleep. Suddenly, I heard my sister's voice outside the bathroom door. Yeah, my nickname for her. I responded, "Ha, Dab, this is us." My dog sat up and stared at the door. There was no answer. I felt a chill then, but seeing that my dog was fixing to lay down again, I brushed it off, thinking maybe my sister went back out to the living room. I hurried my shower, got my towel around me, and walked out to ask my sister if she came to call me. She said no. I said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah. I was out here with Dad. I just came in before you showered to let Kiab in," I exclaimed. Okay, that was creepy, because I know when Kuvo Asab not CJ. But this was solid. It's like you were calling me right out of the bathroom door. My sister and my dad tried to tell me that it's nothing, but I know what I heard. I called my other sister, the married one, and told her what happened. She said that she herself started experiencing stuff like that in her late 20s too. It didn't bother me, but I feel deathly vulnerable right now. I hope it isn't anything bad. Story 12. The haunting Giggle in the woods. A terrifying encounter at the Iowa campground. There's this one campground in Iowa that my family has always gone to camp at for LONG time. It's not an ordinary campground though. It's in the middle of the woods with one road going across the place. I'm sure many of you have been there before. About 2 years ago, I went with my parents and grandparents to go fish there. We went to a nearby location first, then we went to the campground. We decided to split up into groups, and I went with my grandma on a trail to a part of the river that forms a little pond. I don't fish, so I was just there for moral support. I was walking by the shallow side of the river back and forth, and I heard the giggles of a little girl from the forest. At first, I was like, what the heck? But I just kept walking down the river. But then I heard it a second time, and that was when my heart dropped. I was so scared. I went to my grandma and stuck by her side for the rest of the time until we went back. During the ride home, I kept thinking about the giggle, and I just wanted to confirm what I heard, so I asked my grandma how do me Nuam Pojane Tuksug trolls sounds like. She then said, "Me Nuam Pojane Nuksug, Walub Swab Luag Zoo, Li Hehehe / they laugh like this Heheaheh." Right when I heard that, I started crying non-stop, saying Kov Novlis Tav / I heard that, and the whole car was shook. Everyone was like, "Are you sure? Did you really hear that?" I cried for about a good 30 minutes. I was so scared. When we got home, my mom gave me a necklace / exov that was blessed by a shaman, and I slept with it on. The whole night, all I thought about and heard was the giggle. Story 13. The ghostly giggle and haunted leaves. Chilling encounters with my toddler. My toddler was doing things that we didn't teach him. He was born at the end of 2018, so his toddler years were spent with just us and the television. Quarantine was tough for all of us, but my wife and I noticed strange behaviors from our son during that time. He used to stand, bend over, and look between his legs constantly. At first, we didn't think anything of it, but one night, while our son was asleep, my wife and I were talking and joking around when she brought up that, when she was a kid, her and her friends used to say that looking between your legs is how you see ghosts. You could definitely feel the atmosphere change as our conversation went from lively and humorous to serious. Our son's room was right next to ours. We heard him speaking gibberish and went to go check on him. We always kept the door slightly open so that we could hear him in case anything was to ever happen. When we looked over, the door was wide open. I was the one who put him to bed that night, and I knew I didn't leave it open. Our son was still baby talking from his bed. My wife grabbed my arm and turned on the bedroom light. My son was standing on his bed, bent over and looking over at us, though his legs. I really tried to keep my cool until I heard the bathroom door shut from down the hall. My wife ran to pick up my son. I walked over to investigate the bathroom and found no one. We checked all the rooms, doors, and windows before we went back to bed. We stopped our son whenever he tried to get back in that stance. After a week or so, he stopped doing it altogether. It was a relief because, honestly, we were both scared. Another incident happened around Halloween. We were all asleep already when my wife was woken up by our son yelling and crying. She, of course, woke me up to go check. When I got in his room, he was sitting at the corner of his bed in the wall. He quieted when he saw me. I plopped down on his bed next to him in a joking manner, and he laughed. What he did next sent chills down my spine. My son had leaves in his hand. I had no idea when or where he had gotten them, but he put them to his face and said, "Mimo." At first, I thought he was just imitating a monster face or something he saw on TV or YouTube. But then he singled out one of the leaves, put it to his eye, and looked through it. "Mimo. Mimo," he yelled frantically. I turned to the door and saw nothing. That's when I remembered a story my grandmother told me about seeing ghosts through leaves. It was something about caterpillars eating leaves, and if you look through the holes left behind on the leaves, you could see spirits. I grabbed the leaf from my son. There's no way he was doing what I thought he was doing. My wife came over and asked me what he was yelling about. I told her he was having a nightmare, so she said we could let him sleep with us. She picked him up and walked out. I was following when, stupidly, I felt like looking through the leaf. I regretted it so much because, when I did, I saw two little girls in front of me. One turned her head, noticed me, and they both ran down the hall. Story 14, Possessed by the Past. The terrifying tale of my great-grandma's final days. My oldest brother once told us a story about when they were still living in Thailand before my parents and them moved to the US and had us younger children. Was telling us that our great-grandma was really ill to the point where she couldn't walk anymore. Every day, she would just lay in bed and mumble to herself. Things she talked about never made sense. She had to be fed and cleaned. She wasn't capable to do anything at all on her own. Everyone knew she was slowly passing away. Couple weeks before her death, she had begun to get possessed. During the day, she was doing what she regularly did. Just laid in bed because she wasn't capable of getting up. However, at night, she got up by herself and jumped on chairs and jumped around with her eyes wide open and tongue sticking out. She would do that until the sun was about to rise. Then she'd go back to bed, and she would lay there helpless until the nighttime came again. When she passed away, the odor was excruciating. People were saying they didn't know why her body gave such an odor compared to other funerals they've been to. When nighttime came around, you know how they stay at the family's house for the nighttime thing. Around 3 or 4 in the morning, my dead great-grandmother got up and let out a scream and tried to take off the home clothes she was clothed in with her eyes rolled back and the biggest grin on her face. One of the older guys said some words, and she laid back down regularly. You could say that it woke everyone up, and everyone wanted to leave immediately, but they stayed for the sake of the family. When it came time to bury her, it rained like crazy, and they had a hard time because one of her shoe went missing. After looking everywhere, it was under one of the beds of my uncle's. After the burial, my brother ended up sleeping with my uncle in his bed. Same bed the dead great-grandmother's shoe was under. And he said that the whole night he heard mumbling under the bed like my great-grandma used to do. Story 15. The Haunted Swing Set. The Mystery of the Twin Ghosts in Wisconsin. I have a step-uncle who I was really close to and still am today. We weren't that far apart in age, but he told me a story growing up that still makes me wonder this day. Back in the early mid-2000s, my step-uncle's aunt rented a house from these white people. I don't know why they did, but she did. They live in Wisconsin. I was told that the house was old, but it had a security camera system. My uncle's aunt's family obviously agreed to use the camera system, but one night she saw something on the camera. Long story short, the house had a swing set in the backyard. But one night, she saw the swing swinging because there were 2 girls swinging on it. They were twins. My uncle's aunt had children, but no twins. The 2 girls were described as both having long black hair, red dresses, and red shoes. Just swinging by on the swings. It happened almost every night. It got to the point where my uncle's aunt obviously couldn't take it anymore and told the owner, "I'm out low." The lesson is, I guess, to always research the house before you rent it, especially if it's ironically cheap, But the question is, the house was owned by white people, so why were there two girls with long black hair? Were they Pojane Tuxug trolls? My uncle did say that, after the war ended, ghosts do travel with you. And there have been a few stories in Wisconsin, where a lot of Hmong people live. Story 16. The Unseen Visitor. A chilling encounter with my nephew's ghostly playmate. Okay, so this encounter of mine is scary but short. This encounter is about my sister-in-law's oldest sister, who was murdered 2 weeks before this. 2013. I was at my brother's house. Let's call him Leng. Name change for safety. I was babysitting my nephews while Leng and his wife were out. It was around 9 a.m. I was in the bathroom putting on makeup, and I heard my nephew knocking on the door. I opened and he comes in smiling. I went on with my business, but all of a sudden I felt like there was someone behind me. I looked into the mirror, but still nothing. I ignored it. I put my makeup bag on top of the toilet. Then I heard my nephew playing peekaboo. I turn around, and there he was, playing with someone behind the shower curtains.
I felt chills go down my spine. I quietly said, "Baby, who's that?"
My nephew looks at me, smiling, and pointed at the tub. No one was there, and I was getting ready to run, but I heard a bang by the toilet. I turned to look, and somehow my makeup bag fell into the garbage can. I was at the MAX of spooked, so I ran, forgot my nephew. 2 seconds later, my brother Leng and his wife got back and asked me what was wrong. I told them, and my sister-in-law said, my sister used to play that with him. Maybe it was her. Story 17. The Girl in the Nightgown, a haunting encounter at a rest stop. I have 2 Dab Laos, maternal uncles, who obviously are brothers, and they live in Fresno. Back in the day in the ATS, there were no phones to play with or use to have fun and kill time. So, what do? They go hang out randomly at night with their friends. The older uncle, along with my younger uncle and their friend, was supposed to hang out that night like any other guy in their 20s. The plan was to just drive around, I guess, and do whatever. Remember, there weren't any phones. But anyway, the younger uncle didn't want to go and decided to stay home that night. My older uncle and his friend ended up driving around for fun. They drove and forgot where, but there was a rest stop / restroom area. It was 3 in the morning, and they saw a girl with long hair just standing in front of the rest stop building. She was just standing there in a nightgown. Now, not going to lie, I don't think my uncle and his friend were really smart for doing this, but they parked their car and tried to talk to her to see if she was okay. That's where the story ends, because apparently my older uncle was traumatized. By the way, my younger uncle is the one that told the story. But I asked, that's it? Was she Hmong? Was she Asian? What happened after that? My younger uncle said he came home that night, but he wouldn't tell what she looked like. And I was like, why? Uncle, sometimes it's better to leave the story as it is. If he won't tell, then maybe it's better that way. To this day, I have a theory that my uncle saw a dead Hmong woman, and there's a reason why he can't say what she looks like or who she is. What do you guys think? Thank you for always supporting the channel and welcoming its videos. Wishing you good health, and remember to subscribe to the channel to achieve 1,000 subscriptions.